everyone. Welcome to this event on Last Mile Connectivity Solution Guide. My name is Aamir. I'm regional staff at the regional office of ITU based out of Jakarta. So today we have two sessions, in which the first one in which we will introduce the Last Mile Connectivity Toolkit, followed by an expert session. But before, I will hand over the floor to Ms. Atsuko Okuda, who's the Regional Director, for the opening remarks. Ms. Atsuko.
Thank you. Good morning and good afternoon to everyone. Welcome to the Last Mile Connectivity in Asia and the Pacific planning tools to address the gap information session. And I would like to first of all thank the moderator and presenters and resource persons who joined us today to discuss this important topic. In particular, I would like to express my special thanks to Thomas, who is joining us from California on Sunday nights, and the support of ADB and collaboration that we enjoyed since the first information session that we organized with ADB last September. The objective of this information session are threefold. One, to share with you the toolkits of last mile connectivity, and my colleague Amel and of course, the experts and Esteban, my colleague from Geneva, will talk about it more in detail. And two, naturally, we will use this tool in the IT use initiatives such as GIGA and Smart Village and Smart Islands. And three, we would like to encourage the partners and participants to use this tool for their planning. And in all of this, we would like to hear from you, your suggestions, proposals, and partnerships to move the last mile connectivity forward. And finally, I would like to add that this event is an event of WSIS, the World Summit on the Information Society. And this will give us an opportunity to place these events and the importance of the last mile connectivity in a bigger picture of WSIS global landscape. So without further ado, I will give the floor back to Amil. Thank you.
Thank you, Atsuko. We will start with the first session in which we will introduce the Last Mile Connectivity Toolkit. I will share my screen now. Everyone can see the slides.
Yes, we can see.
Yes, we can.
Yeah. Thank you. So this presentation is an introduction, a summary of the whole toolkit, the last mile connectivity solution toolkit that we have designed. I will start with the reasoning why we need this toolkit, especially in our Asia and the Pacific region, followed by the summary of the toolkit and some issues going ahead. Now, let's see where we stand in the Asia and the Pacific right now. If you see the number of individuals that are connected to internet in the Asia Pacific region, we are below the total average of the world. We stand at 45% right now, which is below the average of 51% for the whole world. So this means that there's a lot of room requirement of connectivity in the region, and the most of the population that is living in LDCs, the least developed countries or the landlocked countries, these are the ones that are targeted. And even the developing countries, they are even below the average of the Asia Pacific as well. So one thing is clear, that there is a requirement of establishing a connectivity at the level because not all the population is connected, and half of it is connected in the Asia Pacific. Now, on the second end, if you see the connectivity situation, in the middle mile, you will see a lot of cable that has been laid, so especially the submarine and terrestrial cable. If you see the figures on the left-hand side of your screen, the number of the kilometers of fiber that has been laid in Asia Pacific is huge as compared to all other regions of the world. But still, as we go through, you will see that there are different countries that are at different varying situation of connectivity according to their population. For example, in case of South Asia Pacific, South Asia Pacific, they have very high percentage of people that are not connected to the internet. So what this means that there is a considerable middle mile infrastructure that is already there, but there exists a need of last mile connectivity to maybe rural population or unconnected or unserved population to make sure that we have the rest of the population online now. This generates the idea of what should we do, to facilitate this and to improve the situation in the Asia and the Pacific. Now, to help this out, what we had done is that we had prepared a whole toolkit of last mile connectivity. It's just not just only a guideline, but it's also a set of methodologies, software tool parameters, and capacity building material in addition to the guidelines that completes the whole toolkit, which could be used by decision makers or at the administration level, development partners, or for their implementation of their plans, business, or regulatory connectivity solutions. So when we say a toolkit, it's not merely only a guideline, but guideline is one part of this whole toolkit. I will explain later in the slide going forward. Now, this toolkit that we have been mentioning, the last one connectivity toolkit, has 4 layers. The above 3 layers, as you see on the screen, they are more related to the software calculations tools that are used for implementation and planning connectivity in different areas for at the last mile, and including some challenges on the middle mile as well. The last layer, which is the resource layer, that includes the guideline, which is very important for the national administrations or sector members. That gives them a guide on how to prepare and plan. And the above 3 layer, they provide a supporting layer to make the decisions as per the guidelines. Now there are different resource layers publications. For example, this last year in December, we have released the last mile connectivity solution guide, which has been published now, and the link is available in the event web page as well. Now, this solution guide is based on different submissions that have been submitted by different sector members, operators, pilots that have been done. And based on that, this solution guideline was made, but it remains a living document, and it would be updated regularly. After that, what we are going to do is prepare a LMC procurement guide, and followed by that, in the future, there are going to be different resources that would be available. I will go to the 3 layers in details as well in the later part of the slide to give you more idea of what kind of toolkit and what kind of software tools we have and what can they do. Now, just to give a highlight of what we have done in the last year, if you see against all these 4 layers that I have mentioned, there have been work parallelly been done on all the levels. The parameter layer, which we call the data layer, we have been gathering data from different countries, different operators, different kind of traffic scenarios that we have been calculating and updating our parameter layer, based on which this software is run according to a methodology. On the software layer, we will have a demonstration as well in the end part of this intervention. We have a software specifically to calculate what kind of requirements are there, what kind of not only the technical requirements, but what are the business requirements, what is the capex and opex that are needed. And all these are done based on some methodology, which we have been developing over the years based on the case studies that we have done. Now, this not only takes into account the methodology, the ICT connectivity solutions, but also in case many of the cases, specifically in Asia and Pacific, where the requirement is not only the ICT connectivity, the rural areas are not connected by electricity. So this calculations by the tool also takes into account this capex requirement when we need some solar energy panels to provide the electricity at the schools or other communities, rural communities which don't have electricity. So this is basically what we had done in 2020. And one of the last layer, I will start from the last layer, which is the resources layer. In last December, as I mentioned, we had launched the last mile connectivity solution guide, which provides a lot of information, step-by-step information that the countries need to take to evaluate different solutions for a particular site or particular area or that needs a connectivity at the last mile length. Going forward, we would have a procurement guide that would be released in Q1 2021. We are working on that, and hopefully we would be finishing off and publishing this in the end of this quarter. Um, from this slide onward, I would shift to one of the co-authors of the guideline report, who would give you an overview of how this guideline is and how you can utilize it. I will shift to John. John?
Great. Thank you so much, Aamir, for the introduction and for the opportunity to dive further into the solutions guide. Maybe just a little bit of background. As Aamir has mentioned, the last mile internet connectivity solutions guide. Aamir, if you could just go back to the cover slide. The solutions guide is just, as Aamir said, one component of the overall toolkit that the ITU is developing. And the solutions guide itself, as Aamir mentioned, was launched in December, and it was written together with Aminata Amadou Garba under Ishvan Bozoki's leadership at the ITU. Now the URL is shown there, and if you click through the URL, what you'll find is that the solutions guide is actually a large document. It's a 160-page solutions guide document with companion pieces. So there's a companion slide deck, about 106 or so slides of a presentation, as well as an online database of last mile access deployments for anybody to be able to access and to dive into and explore. So all of that is available at that URL that's shown there. As Aamir mentioned, the solutions guide is really an active document that we envision to be used in the program design stage of any type of last mile access deployment. And there were really three characteristics that we wanted to be sure and infuse in the solutions guide. The first is that we wrote the solutions guide from the perspective of practitioners, people who are actually building last mile connectivity issues. And a lot of this was infused by the work that we're doing here in the Philippines with another hat. I'm the technical advisor on a 6,000 free public Wi-Fi site deployment with UNDP and the government of the Philippines. To expand last mile connectivity. Similarly, from deployments that I've been a part of while at USAID, where we were working on deployments across sub-Saharan Africa, we faced many of the challenges that we write about in this solutions guide. And in those experiences before, we had to pull reference material and look at other projects, but we felt it would be useful to have a living document that had a lot of those resources. So as you go through the guide, you'll see that we think through the challenges of how do you identify unconnected sites, how do you define and identify constraints that are limiting connectivity to those sites, and then how do you identify the technologies, the business models, et cetera, that overcome those challenges and those constraints. So we'll go through that very briefly in the few minutes that I have. The second perspective that we really wanted to infuse in this report was that we wanted to write it from the viewpoint of communities themselves, communities that are lacking in connectivity service. So this is, the solutions guide at least is not a universal access approach or methodology or a top-down national broadband planning approach, whereas the other parts of the toolkit convey some of those elements. So it really complements the rest of the toolkit. And the third perspective that I think you'll find in the solutions guide is that we focus on sustainable, affordable communication service options that are deployed, that can be deployed today, right? And that's really key. We talk a little bit about, of course, emerging technologies, but the bulk of the focus that you'll see in the report is about what can be deployed today. So we really hope that this document will be used not just by national governments, but maybe more so by local communities, local governments, to understand and address the connectivity gaps that they're facing. So the report, as mentioned, is a 106-page document. Please go to the URL there. I'll take you through just a few steps and pieces within the report. So Aamir, if you could kindly move to the next slide. So maybe just a little bit of housekeeping on describing the telecommunications network, what we mean by last mile. I think it's the previous slide to the steps. So just a quick note on what we mean by last mile. So we focus on last mile from the perspective of network expansion. So if you think about a telecommunication network as it exists today, and here's a depiction of one, internet connectivity really begins from the link to the global public internet. And that starts with the international link, usually through undersea fiber optic cables that connect to countries, that connect to a country's shore via a cable landing station. But it also happens through terrestrial fiber, through land borders, as well as through satellite connectivity. What that connectivity does is it flows through a country's backbone network, the middle mile, and then to the last mile. So really the right-hand side that you see in this figure, which takes many different forms, the different technologies that connect to the last mile, from terrestrial wireless technologies, satellite connectivity, and wired technologies such as fiber. And the solutions guide has a number of reference documents and tables that walk through the different characteristics of many different connectivity technologies. Also, just to note, in the solutions guide, we focus on we use the phrase last mile, but we use it in a way that's really synonymous with how some practitioners use the label first mile, really describing that connection from communities to the internet. And in many cases, localities or communities themselves are the ones that are actually building the infrastructure links from their communities to the broader communications network. So we use the phrase last mile for the solutions guide. Aamir, if you could go to the next slide, I'll just quickly mention the steps that are involved. So the overall structure of this solutions guide is governed by 4 steps, four steps in the overall process. And the idea here is to have a practical modular reference document for each of the key steps in designing an intervention. We felt that this was a useful format to have so that it allows a team or a community to go through the steps from start to finish, or just focus on specific issues in a modular way, so such as mapping network coverage or reviewing different models of intervention. So you'll see here, step 1 is really all about identification. How do you identify communities and areas where limited service options exist, and identifying the constraints that limit connectivity deployments to those areas. Step 2 focuses on what we know about other last mile deployments, how they're structured, different technologies and models that have been used elsewhere. Step 3 double clicks further into the various constraints and different specific solutions that can overcome those constraints. And it conveys, importantly, a decision matrix that helps to identify a potential final approach. And then step 4 discusses some of the ways to implement some of the interventions, both from the perspective of the community, but also the broader ecosystem, including a lot of the organizations that are present here, as well as public sector support. So if you go to the next slide, Aamir, just to mention a few things about the individual steps. So, step 1 is really, when you think about problems, the first step in solving any problem is really understanding the extent of the issue. And so in this case, knowing exactly where are the unconnected communities can be very challenging, or even just the extent of the lack of infrastructure availability. So this all begins with a mapping exercise. And Aamir talked about some of the aggregate numbers around, over 60% of rural households are without internet access, nearly 4 billion people who are not even within 25 kilometers of fiber optic infrastructure. But we really need to know where these gaps are geographically. And so when there are infrastructure maps, a lot of times this is proprietary commercial information. A lot of times the information is incomplete, or it's just inaccurate and overstating true coverage. So in the solutions guide, we first go through the importance of mapping connectivity availability, some of the constraints to the expansion of services, such as other complementary infrastructure, as Aamir mentioned, power grid infrastructure, for example, and then of course geographical and topographical constraints and socioeconomic limitations. So we present a variety of different database resources, tools, and techniques within step 1. Aamir, if you could kindly go to the next slide. Step 2 focuses on what we know about other last mile connectivity deployments, how they're structured, what technologies and models have been used elsewhere that could potentially apply to a new situation. So what we did here was we developed a case study database with over 120 different last mile access deployments. That's freely accessible. It's in that link. And each of these deployments we characterized across 17 different dimensions. So what we were able to do here then is develop a typology of interventions, primarily differentiating between the type of network technology in use, predominantly between mobile cellular infrastructure and fixed internet service providers, and then the extent of the profit motive, right? Commercial deployments versus not-for-profit deployments. And so in this section, we also go into a lot of detail on different types of technologies, wireless, wired, backhaul, and emerging technologies. Step 3, Aamir, if you could kindly go to the next slide, goes into the detail on the various constraints faced by specific solutions and how to address them, and then conveys a decision matrix that helps to identify a final approach. So we present a model here that goes through 5 different critical components of the selection process. We look at affordability in line with the Broadband Commission's guideline around 2% of monthly per capita income in terms of service pricing, the usage needs of a community, financial viability, organizational structure of the entity that's doing the deployments and regulatory considerations, and then also sustainability of the network and the intervention. So this section, step 3, presents a decision matrix that shows how you can go through an iterative approach and determine what kind of a solution may be best fit for different situations. And then there's additional decision support tools and investment models that are shared here. And Aamir, if you go to my last slide, step 4. In step 4 in the solutions guide, we present options for supporting these different interventions on the basis of policy and regulatory adjustments that improve the economic feasibility of different interventions, as well as different types of subsidy interventions, one-time subsidy versus ongoing or recurring interventions. And so each of a number of the different case studies that are presented, we highlight the different policy actions that supported those deployments. So, there's a number of documents also in annex, but I think the final point that I'll make is that we really meant for this document to be used in active deployments, in the design of deployments, both for commercial entities as well as in public and not-for-profit entities. So that's why we created this as guidelines with the companion slides and with the reference tables. We don't want this just to be a PDF that we release once, we talk about here, and then it fades away. So we really encourage you to have a look and talk to us how to best leverage all of the content in the solutions guide, which is just one component of the overall toolkit that Aamir will talk more of. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Aamir.
Thank you, John. So now let's go to the other 3 parts that are the methodology, the parameters, and the tool, software tool. Let's go first to the methodology, how the tool itself decides what are the options. So for the methodology, we take different kind of data that is available. Some is available from the open sources like geographic area, population, demand, and connectivity from the open sources. Then there are some that are predefined in the tool, like the technology, the standards, the building codes that could be there, and also the prices and the labor cost that could be input using in the national context as well. Based on this methodology, the output is in the form of the best option that is there. For example, it could be the Ethernet, FX is for fixed, and then the Wi-Fi solution. What could be the capex, opex, and what is the net present value of that? So each best option for the last mile connectivity is in the form of the options that are going to be available based as an output. Now, as I mentioned, that it also involves some of the essential requirements in deployment in the very rural areas which might not have electricity. So there is also a methodology developed to cater for this in cases where there is no electricity available. There is the input is provided, for example, how many working hours per day it is needed, what should be the efficiency of the batteries that were going to be involved, what kind of solar power it's needed. And based on that, the output is what is the extra capex and opex requirement for, let's say, schools that in which the last mile connectivity is needed to be provided. So there are different methodologies for different scenarios for the ICT connectivity or for the electricity provision. This is another option that is available, the school connectivity traffic profile estimator. For this kind of a tool, it provides information on what kind of to generate what is the bandwidth requirement actually for a particular school. It has different number of input data. For example, how many users are going to be there, what kind of services they are going to be requiring, like learning scenarios, real-time services are there, what kind of quality is required, what's the the requirement of video is there, and how intensely this is going to be used. All the parameters, they are as they come as an input, and after that a school connectivity traffic profile is simulated and the results are displayed. Now, going from methodology to software itself, just give you an example of what it actually looks like. We have a project that is this tool has been integrated, which is called the GIGA broadband calculation tool. This is the kind of information that we put in. For example, here we have the school name, just the region, the sub-region, the coordinates of the data are provided, if there is a coverage or not, what is the availability of electricity, distance to the fiber is given. All these are the input data which could also be generated from a separate information software, and then based on that, this template, the data could be generated, and you know the same output method that we saw, that the methodology and what is the capex and opex requirement are given. Again, this is some of the input documents and the parameters that are used. There are number of parameters that are involved in calculation of more than 200 of them, and 2500 predefined values about the global and regional national variables are there. And these calculations could be done and the outputs are, I would emphasize that these are best possible estimates, and these depend on what are the input are there, and the more data, the more accurate the data that is in the input, the closer the estimates would be from the original cost. Similar example of the output, and there the school name, what is the fiber optic, what how much it's going to be cost, if the connection is through microwave, what should be the capex and opex. Now if from this the calculations, you can easily measure what it's going to be, what is the most efficient possible scenario according to the requirements that is given. This is the software itself, the main school connectivity traffic profile constructor. You give the inputs of the data, the quality level, scenario, all the ones that were mentioned in the methodology, and the outputs are given. Some calculations for the input data and the mentions of the broadband middle-mile connection for different kind of profiles, like basic, intermediate, or advanced, depending on the density, the quality of users, and the devices, number of devices. Each This is an example of the school connectivity in which different for different schools and for different number of users and scenarios, the results are given. Now the parameters, there is a huge list of parameters for diagnostic list. They could be classified into global parameters, regional, national, or very specific parameters. The economical and geographical parameters, which are basically the input data, they are mostly very specific or have a national or regional context, while the others, like labor costs and others, they could be generalized for a global or a regional scale. But the ones that are more global, they include this, for example, the cost of the equipment, materials, um, that could be classified into parameters. So you can see there are a number of parameters that are involved in these calculations. Some are fixed input, like the standards that are there, but the others, they are variable and it be adjusted according to the requirements as mentioned, for example, in case of connecting the schools. Again, an example of the data that is indicated, the low quality, high quality level, what are the different kind of services that might be required, and what are the latency requirements. These are determined according to the ITUT recommendations that are mentioned in the link below, the values, the different standards that are there according to quality of service. On this slide, it's the actual data indicated in the table for a real school in Odessa, Ukraine. And the school is connected to the internet through an optical channel with a bandwidth of 50 megabits per second. And the number of users is 385. Which is 350 students and 35 school employees. So you can see from here what the services and the actual implementation of the tool in one of the real case scenarios. Now, before going ahead, I will give the floor to one of my colleague, Ihar, who can give you a small demonstration of how it actually looks. Ihar, if you are ready.
Yes. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Let me share my screen first, and then I will introduce you the broadband diagnostic tool, which is used for the required bandwidth calculations and the broadband links calculations to connect schools to the internet. Let me share my screen first. So I hope you can see it. So to use the tool, we need to register first. Once registered, we sign in. And this is the main page, the home page with a list of created projects. It's empty in the beginning. Let's create a new project. You can see the progress bar above, which shows the number of steps and the description of steps to be taken during the process of calculation. Let's first select the country. This is a very important step because many parameters that broadband diagnostic tool uses are country specific. Let's type the project name and project description optionally and continue. The second step offers 3 options. The first option is to calculate broadband connections to the nearest fiber node for each school independently. The second option allows us to calculate broadband connections for schools as a network of interconnected nodes and recommend the network topology to interconnect schools. This option is good to calculate links for a group of schools located relatively close to each other. It allows to achieve an economy of scale. It uses one of the criteria to recommend a topology option, cost of ownership or net present value. The third option is to skip broadband connection calculations. For the purpose of this demonstration, let's choose this second option. The third step, we choose between required bandwidth and broadband links calculation options. The first option allows us to enter the required bandwidth and calculate broadband links costs only. The second case, we choose to calculate the required bandwidth together with broadband links costs. In the third case, we calculate only the required bandwidth without broadband link costs. Okay, let's choose the second option. On the fourth step, we select traffic profile. Traffic profile is a set of parameters that describes a particular service usage. There are 9 profiles divided by service quality and usage intensity levels. Let's select basic profile. On the 5th step, we select technologies we want to include into calculations. Out of fiber optical cable line, mobile cellular network, microwave radio link, satellite communication link, we can select all of them. Let's choose fiber optical line and microwave radio link for this demonstration. On the next step, the system offers us to calculate additional costs for local area network construction. I'll skip this step in this demonstration. Finally, we are on the settings preview page where we can check our global calculation settings and download data entry templates. There are 2 types of them, simple and extended. The simple template contains fields to fill in with minimum data required for calculations. The extended template requires more data to be entered to take some specific parameters into account for calculation. However, both templates can be adjusted accordingly to the user's needs. For instance, the final numbers influencing the required bandwidth calculations are the number of computers and mobile devices, and you can change them directly. Let's download the simple template. Okay, maybe I will reshare my screen to show you how it looks. So this is a simple template. It has already filled with school data. It consists of several regions, several fields. The first group of fields contains school identification information. The second group of fields contains geographical location and infrastructure information, the school coordinates, the type of mobile cellular coverage, the availability of electricity, and the distance to the nearest fiber. And also it contains the number of users. The coordinates are used only for the topology calculations. Once it's filled, the fields to the right are green. It means that the information is enough to make calculations. So let's continue with our tool. Okay, once we've created the project, we can select it from the list of projects. And we can upload the template, which has already the data. So the data entry template is being uploaded. And now we can start the calculations. You can see the progress bar here, the calculations is going on. Here you can see a set of parameters, the global project parameters that are used for prices calculations and some technical parameters also. They also can be changed according to your needs. You just have to download this template, change the values and upload it once again to recalculate the project. It's almost calculated. Yeah, the calculation process is finished. And now here we can see the results of calculations, the total bandwidth, some graphical representation of the calculation results, and the map of proposed topology, network topology with interconnection links between a group of schools. We can also download a calculation report and see the results in Excel table. I will show you the table in a moment. So there is a table which contains the calculation results, the required bandwidth, the economical parameters for each of the selected technology. So we've chosen the fiber optical line for this case. Okay, let me share my screen. Not this one. Yeah, and also you can download the calculation log file. So this is how it works. This is a beta version of the software, and it's being tested and updated at the moment, but you can access and try it through connectschools.online link. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Ihar. I will continue the last part of the presentation. Let me share the screen. I hope you can see my screen. So going to the last part. So going ahead, what are we going to do? There's another tool that we are bringing it up. These are the tools that yet we have developed are based on the technical parameters and cost analysis. But there's going to be a huge difference that is made on the calculation and the capex and opex requirement depending upon the policy changes. So what we have a high-level tool that we are working on right now. So you can see if the idea is that if you put in place the relevant policies and regulatory measures, what the effect is going to be, and how it changes the capex and opex cost and the ease of providing the last mile communication. For example, how if there is a discount on spectrum licenses, what if the regulations support the infrastructure sharing? This, by having a gamification way, using the tool, you can see what eventually would be the cost and benefit on putting the place the right policies and regulations at the national level to support the last mile connectivity. This is something that we are working on, and it's coming up. Going forward in 2021, we will continue the work on all the parallelly on all the layers, and there is going to be what we expect that training materials are going to be available by the end of 2021. We are working on that, and very soon the procurement guide would be available, as I mentioned earlier as well. This will continue into 2022. We are going to have a series of training on LMC solution and materials. High-level tool would be calibrated again in 2022, and again on all parameter levels, whether getting data from different areas or updating the methodology or updating the software, all would be done parallelly depending upon different instances that we are going to have. Now, how this toolkit as a whole could be used, I've mentioned three different ways. In case of ITU, we are integrating into our initiatives like the GIGA and Smart Village or Island initiatives, and to have a very specific idea on what and where would be the initiatives and what would be the cost and operation costs, and how could we have a sustainability out of it, because one of the issues of sustainability is going to be addressed in the LMC toolkit publications as well. For national governments and all our sector members, this toolkit could be used for national businesses and connectivity planning. And for the development partners, we could work with them to have very specific interventions and impactful interventions using the toolkit. I think this is our last slide. We will try to answer all the questions that have been made in the chat or the question answer box as we go along. But now I shift the floor to Ms. Atsuko Okuda for the next session.
Thank you very much, Aamir, John, and Ihar. It was a very good and informative presentation. Now, for all the participants, as you may have seen, my colleagues have been sharing the resources for your information. So you are encouraged to access these resources and perhaps review. And I already see a question from the participants. Perhaps what we can do is to take it up in the next session on the panel discussions, and perhaps the experts can also share their views together with the presenters from the earlier session. And I would also encourage the participants to use the chat as well as the Q&A functions of this Zoom function, so that any question you may have can be answered as we go. Due to the limited time which is available. So perhaps before I give the floor to the moderator of the next session, I would like to highlight and perhaps as a reminder to all of us how important this whole initiative is to connect the unconnected. As you know, the COVID-19 hit the most vulnerable groups in society, including not only the people in remote and rural areas, but also the girls and women, people with disabilities. So we need to speed up our efforts to connect. And for that, we would like to explore the partnerships and joint initiatives so that we can join hands and create synergies among all of us. So without the further ado, can I give the floor to Thomas as the moderator of the next session? Thomas, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Atsuko, and thanks for inviting me. And thanks, Aamir, John, and Ihar for the great presentation. And my name is Thomas Abell. I'm the Chief of Digital Technology for the Asian Development Bank. And we have a very energetic partnership with ITU on connectivity because ADB has always understood that connectivity is a foundation for development in the region. And we have invested in connectivity solutions over many years, including investing in submarine cables, satellite connectivity. We've helped support new telco operators in developing countries. We help governments with their broadband plans. And ITU is a great partner. We have also some great projects in the works with ITU, and we're looking forward to continuing working on that. So for our panel, we have a great group of 4 distinguished guests who are going to answer some questions. And of course, if anybody has any additional questions, raise those in the chat window. So we have Mr. Bill Dan, Chief Strategist of Huawei. We have Mr. Naveed Haq from ISOC, who's the W4C program. And we have Mr. Imran Malik from SES. He is leading the Teleglobal Bhakti project in Indonesia. And we have Mr. Yasuhiko Kawasumi, Vice Chair of ITUD Study Group 1. And each of our panelists brings a unique perspective into this. And we can have each of them offer a little bit of their perspective in addition to answering some questions. So the first question that we have actually, and we're going to ask each of the 4 panelists to go in order and start off this first basic question, which is what are the challenges to extending affordable connectivity solutions to rural and underserved areas, and how do we overcome those challenges? So this is obviously a very broad question. So I guess we'll start with that. And so we'll start with Mr. Lan. Go ahead, Bill.
Yes, I think the challenge to deter the expansion of last mile connectivity could be categorized as infrastructure, availability, consumer readiness, and content and service. The infrastructure barriers related to technology selection, cost of deployment, spectrum, and the site acquisition, which are regarded as the most critical issue to the public, is actually not as tough as what we thought. Technology solutions include fixed wireless, cell line, and other innovative solutions have already matured, cost-effective, and can be complement to each other to reach every corner of the world. Cost of technology solution, like wireless, for example, has already down to the ground. Nevertheless, spectrum, the field of wireless industry is still the bottleneck for the expansion of affordable mobile internet service. To activate and accelerate the assignment of available INT spectrum, especially the sub-1 GHz band imposed by universal service obligation for better rural coverage is the prerequisite. In addition, reducing the impact of spectrum acquisition costs is also vital. Major like reducing the reserve price for spectrum auction, providing instrument instead of a one-time payment, as well as spectrum price discount for winning bidders who are willing to provide service in the underserved areas are also effective. Regulatory enforcement on infrastructure sharing, tower sharing, as well as collaborative construction should be put in place to maximize network coverage and reduce the cost of service delivery. However, it is not realistic to expect technology for free and investment for no return. Even the public subsidized network infrastructure will carry a large financial burden on year after year OPEX without a driven force from the demand side. So increase the user affordabilities on the ownership of networking device and the internet service, as well as the ability to use internet application by public subsidy is only the short-term vision. In the long run, to activate rural economy and increase the personal income through the aid of ICT technologies will be the sustainable goal. So that is why the objective There is the objective of smart village pilots. The Huawei is going to work with ITU and the local government in Asia Pacific this year. And we are looking forward to more partners to join us. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. And we'll go to Naveed next.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Thomas. From where I see, I think the biggest challenge is the availability of the network, availability of the infrastructure. Places in remote and rural areas where perhaps a traditional telecommunication network would not go and invest, given that there is a little or no return on investment. We all know that the networks work on commercial basis. There's always an investment, which is the capital that they put in, and then there is a return on investment that every operator expects. So from where I see, I think that gap is the most critical challenge that we have. Who will fill up that gap of networks? And that's where I see a great opportunity of small networks. I remember when I was working with the regulator in Pakistan, this is back in 15 years, we used to have those smaller ISPs. We call them rural ISPs as well. And those smaller networks were there to fill that and bridge that gap of small towns and small areas or small villages where they won't be investing too much of money, but they will be providing service to very little population. I don't see those smaller networks anymore, those smaller ISPs anymore. So from where I see, I think that gap is the most critical challenge. Who will fill up that gap? And in the later part of my intervention, I'll perhaps be giving some examples where we see some cooperatives, some non-profit, and also some public-owned network models exist in these days, and they are contributing a lot towards filling up those gaps.
Great. Thanks, Naveed. So next we'll go to Imran.
Hi, Thomas. From my point of view, I think I would like to highlight what Atsuko had said in the beginning. I mean, 2020 was a very, very different year. And I think it has fundamentally changed the way we live. Being online and getting access to the internet is no longer a luxury. I think it's an absolute requirement, not just for people in the cities, but definitely for large populations in the rural areas. So Bill has touched upon some challenges that we need to address, and similarly, Naveed has given a very good example of the rural ISPs. So from my point of view, since I am representing a satellite operator, I would like to bring up the following. The first is the spectrum availability. So in order for us to be able to extend the last mile, and the easiest way to do that and the quickest way to do that is through satellite at the moment, because it does not require multiple microwave hop, it does not require laying cables, etc. And it does address a small part of the overall big equation. So the spectrum availability is a big challenge. The C-band spectrum, which is not ideal for broadband networks anyways, is being taken up by 5G deployment, but most importantly, the Ka band spectrum, which is overlapping with the millimeter wave 5G deployments, is where majority of the large high throughput satellite and the broadband connectivity is coming out. So the coexistence of the use of the spectrum between terrestrial and non-terrestrial network, in my opinion, is a very, very big challenge. And then the second thing that I wanted to highlight is that there are no islands anymore. I mean, when I say islands, I mean, there are no standalone networks anymore. I mean, a satellite network cannot exist on itself. It has to coexist with a broader framework. And the last mile has to be interconnected with all sorts of different technologies. So I'm really excited about the future with the 5G coming in, but we have to speed up the interdependability in terms of the definitions of the standard, so that a satellite network can seamlessly integrate with the terrestrial network, whether it's wireless or it's wireline or cable. And similarly, at the end, well, we need to also be able to seamlessly integrate it with the Wi-Fi distribution networks as well. Back to you, Thomas.
Great, thanks, Imran. And we will now go to Mr. Kawasumi for the first question.
Thank you very much. Aamir, can you show the slides which I have sent this morning to you? I will explain.
Please go on. I will try to put them on.
Yes. So slide 2, please.
Just a minute.
First of all, I think my presentation is based on the, I think as I said before, that based on the ITUD Study Group 1 Rapporteurs Group final report on the development of the rural and remote areas. And slide 2 shows it is the same as the toolkit figure 2 as already presented previously. So we are focusing on the last mile. So please show the next slide, slide 3. There are various technologies which are not always innovative, but it is already existing. As you see from this slide, that there are many options. Wireless, wired, fixed wireless, optical fiber cable copper VSAT. VSAT is maybe worked with the satellite, but there are many satellite options, LEO, or geostationary, MEO, I think MEO is mid Earth orbit. LEO is low Earth orbit, and there are many options for the frequency spectrum, like a C band, KU band, and KA band or L band. So I think if we focus on the last mile on the slide 3, please return to slide 3. Aamir? Slide, yes. If I say about innovative technologies, and as you see in this slide, as previous speaker said, that 5G is most innovative solutions for future, but it should be implemented in the rural and remote area by island type, not overlay type. So and other things is I think I should say use of the TV white space for the far rural remote area by reaching to 20 or 30 kilometer and line of sight link. So there is no specific solutions for or innovative technologies. It is very important to have a combination or options combined with various technologies, depending on the geographical or environment of the rural and remote areas. So please go to the next slide, slide 4. Yes, and then I have already explained this slide, so please go to next slide. Take the example of the Federated States of Micronesia, small island developing states, connectivity. This information was presented to the study group 1 ITUD question 5 group from the FSM. That is a very important and very serious problem to provide connectivity to the small island developing state in the South Pacific area. There are thousands of isolated remote islands in this area. And connectivity to the FSM or other small island developing states like RMI, Republic of Marshall Island, or Kiribati, or Palau, or some other countries. There are more than 25 small island developing states in the Asia Pacific. But most of the islands, remote islands, are not connected. That can be connected only by satellite for the time being. But now Asia Development Bank and World Bank Group funded for the submarine cable for the connection to these islands, but only limited to the major island. And there are thousands of small islands scattered, remote islands scattered over the Pacific Ocean. Next slide, please. Yes, this is this cable existed from 2010, connecting Majuro RMI by Kajuran and branched to the Pohnpei of Micronesia to Guam. And next slide, please. This is very new. 2018, YAP is connected by a hunt-through cable extended from Los Angeles, Honolulu, and Guam to Philippines and Indonesia, and very large volume, large capacity cable. And YAP is branched from Guam, Philippines link to in the middle, it is branched to the YAP. And the YAP is, by this cable, YAP is connected to the other federated states of Pohnpei by the previous cable. Honolulu, Guam, Honolulu, Marshall Island, and Guam. And then, please, next cable. Next slide, please. This is a 2019 Chuk to Pohnpei cable. Chuk is one of the post-federated states. Well, is connected to Pohnpei, major capital of the FSM, by the cable. It is also it is also the cable connected to the Guam. And then, please, next slide, please. Yes, this will be completed, I think, this year. East Micronesia cable. It is extended from Ponape to Kosrae, Micronesia, and then to the Nauru and Kiribati. There are thousands of remote islands in this area. And now they have no connection, I think, as far as I know, or by the satellite. Some island is connected by a O3B or Pacific in the future, but for the time being, this connection is bypassing the incumbent telecom operator of these small island countries. And then, please, next slide. Yes, there are critical issues as listed here. One of the important things is that there are local technical expertise or operation and maintenance costs of the infrastructure, and also marine maintenance of the submarine cable, and training is necessary. And also, most important thing is cable system capacities greatly exceed the requirements of small island communities, even future requirements. So I think the last mile connectivity should be developed in these countries or in these small island developing states. And then please go to the next slide. It is an example of the Marshall Island, Republic of Marshall Islands. There are 29 atolls and islands only connected by the satellite, and they share the transponder of the 2 megabit by the DAMA system. And in the small island which I visited many years, more than several years ago, in Mejit Island, it's connected by a satellite, but very low speed. And it is connected, combined to the satellite link by the FEMS cell and GSM mobile phone is available for the islanders. That is the situation. So then please, next slide. Yes, this is one of the innovative way, but it is already not innovative, very conventional now, but it is very implemented in Nepal. And there are many other case studies according to the ITU's toolkit. There are many case studies about deployment of the TB white space. So this may be useful sometimes, not always, but there are, as I said before, there are many options for connecting rural last mile by satellite, Pacific, or 3B, or Inmarsat, Bijan, and also by the terrestrial solutions like TB white space, no line of sight link, or fiber or copper wire, or Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi is sometimes used for long range in the Nepal wireless network of the Himalaya mountain areas. So that is my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kawasumi, and great overview of all of the specific complexities, especially, and we know even the Philippines and Indonesia, each of them has thousands of islands as well that are unconnected. So our next question goes to Naveed, and the question is, as you mentioned in your comments, how can small networks contribute to universal access?
Yeah, thanks, Thomas. So I think Imran said it before as well. You know, the pandemic has learned and made us learn that internet is a lifeline. So whether a network is small or a big, if it provides connectivity, it's a step towards connecting the unconnected. And I think these smaller networks are providing a complementary solution, especially in areas where a traditional telecommunication network operator would not invest. And I've given the reason. The primary reason is due to lesser or zero business case. We have seen that more of these networks are popping up through various models. Some of them have public ownership. We have a network called Zenzelini network in South Africa. Some of them are operating in cooperative models, such as Mooney networks in USA or Goofy network in Spain. And then we have some non-profit approaches, like a program that we run under Internet Society, call it Wireless for Community. Kawasumi-san was just giving an example of Nepal wireless networking. It is one of those networks where you empower the community to build an internet network for the people, by the people. And I would stress that it's very important to pay attention to those kind of smaller networks to bridge the connectivity gaps. Technology is there. I think we are not limited by technology. There are a lot of solutions, whether it's satellite, whether it's wireless, whether it's TV white space, or even in many cases, Wi-Fi spectrum has been used to connect the people themselves. One of the advantages of these small networks, as we see from our experiences, that they offer affordable connectivity because they can be built and operated by the members of the community using off-the-shelf available hardware and software. So you don't have to really build up a fancy network with a very expensive equipment. These networks are smaller, very easy to deploy, and they are being done through off-the-shelf hardware and software, which is easily replaceable as well. Now, deployment of these complementary networks, such as perhaps we can call them community networks, do also provide incentives for the bigger commercial networks, so they can improve their service offerings in these areas. And these small networks also serve as a means of community members to create, exchange, and discuss information. We have seen in many areas where we have worked a frugal innovation coming out of these community networks, these smaller networks, where the people of the villages or the rural places started using internet for their own benefit, for producing some of their own products and selling them to the marketplace. There's an example in Rajasthan, India, where one of the networks that we deployed actually enabled the women in those areas to start putting their products up online using YouTube videos, and they got a lot of good response. So, there's a lot of energy and there's a lot of opportunity when I see these networks popping up, these smaller networks. And of course, these networks need a lot of support from the policy and regulatory side. I'll quickly give some of the recent examples as we have seen. In Mexico, the regulator announced a special social purpose licensing to accommodate these smaller networks. Given that these networks are smaller, they cannot have a lot of investment, but they do need support and they are very eager to connect the unconnected. So the regulator announced this social purpose licensing to accommodate these smaller networks where they can acquire a license paying smaller fee, and there are no regulatory charges afterwards, and they have started deploying networks. Recently, we have partnered in Papua New Guinea, since we were just talking, Kawasumi-san was telling us about the islands in Pacific. We have partnered with the regulator in PNG, NICTA, to deploy the island's first ever coastal village network using Universal Service Fund. I think that's also a big space where we need a lot of attention. There is a lot of money which is residing under universal service obligations in a lot of islands and a lot of developing countries, but they are not being utilized as they could have been. So we are very excited with this partnership in PNG, where we are deploying a smaller network to connect a fisherman community using universal service ones. And then as we just heard in Nepal, there was some policy and regulatory inventions to allow TV white space to deploy a smaller network. Now, I think we need to support these complementary networks through required policy and regulatory tools. Like I said earlier, every network, despite its size, is a step towards achieving universal access. And I think this is the high time when we all make actions to support such initiatives. Back to you, Thomas.
Great, thanks, Naveed. We'll go to the next question is for Imran. And the question is, how can satellite constellations contribute to affordable internet for remote areas?
Right, thanks, Thomas. So I just wanted to build on what Naveed and Kawasumi-san had said. We have tons of examples, and one of the examples that I think you have highlighted in your report as well is the example in Indonesia, and I think it's worth looking into, because this is where the government has made digitalization as one of the key programs, and they've gone out and made things happen, not just with one technology, but they've used every technology that's available to them. A long-range project, which will, I believe, have absolutely a game-changing impact on the people of Indonesia. So the government of Indonesia started out with undersea cable, because it's a huge country with lots and lots of islands. So the Palapa Ring program, which was spread over approximately 10 years. But then in 2017, they realized that it's not just the cable coming into an island. You have to go out and be able to distribute the internet and connect the schools and the rural health facilities in the hinterland as well. And they concluded, after a comprehensive study, that 200 gigabits is required to connect approximately 145,500 public sites, which included 93,000 educational institutions, 47,900 local government, and approximately 37,000 rural health places as well. And they concluded that they can't do this with the available satellite capacity that's available. And so they decided to launch a satellite of their own. So this, I believe, is a prime example where there was a huge government infrastructure initiative, which then made use of all of the available technologies. So the last mile is through satellite in most of these places, but then the distribution is on rural Wi-Fi, and depending upon the number of users and the size of the school or the community that they're serving, the complexity of the local Wi-Fi network is there. And then they also realized that it's not just the basic access to the internet that's needed, but also they need to connect, or they extend the 3G, the 4, and the 4G system out there as well. And then they, to Aamir's point earlier, and Naveed highlighted this as well, that commercial organizations, the telecom cells of the world, would not go to these places because it doesn't make commercial sense. So a very elaborate program was set up where the government of Indonesia, through their universal service obligation arm, is providing the access or the means to provide 3G, 4G services, which can then be commercialized by these organizations. So what I have learned in my last 10 years that I've been active with SCS, and especially looking at these kind of networks around the world, is that the hunger for data has increased. And especially in the last year, again, this is a watershed event in our lifetimes. The dependence on data has increased many folds. So what this basically means is that this is going to act like a catalyst and really change and bring in the tsunami of data and connectivity. So technologies have limitations that are deployed right now. So one of the innovations that has happened in satellite communications is we've gone from the low throughput wide beam satellites to high throughput satellites located in geostationary orbit, to very high throughput satellites like O3b that Kawasumi-san had mentioned, which was an innovation brought by us. But then the amount of data that is being put through is not enough. So this is where the next generation comes in, not just in the medium Earth orbit, but in the low Earth orbit, and also the very high throughput satellites in the geostationary orbit. So what is happening is we are now at an inflection point where we are able to put more and more throughput through satellites. It's still not enough what the terrestrial network can done, but at least it can bridge the gap between where the terrestrial network ends and where we need to extend the network to, especially in the very unconnected areas. So the role that is being played and will be played in the future, because this is just the beginning of the satellite revolution, where satellite is becoming more into mainstream, and the interdependability that I talked about because of the 5G network, 5G deployments coming along, is where you would see the constellation bring in more affordable data. I'm happy to go into more detail if anyone has any questions.
Thanks, Imran. We did have one question about the ESIM technology, whether that is appropriate for last mile Earth station in motion.
I think I'll answer this question by first commenting on the technology that's available today. So what we have in terms of the Earth stations is still the technology of a long time back. The Earth stations still look like the same. They're parabolic antennas, and these are the most efficient ones. So when we are able to move from these parabolic antennas to electronically steerable antennas, flat panel antennas in an affordable way, that's when things are going to really take off for satellite communications. So this is a very exciting technology, but I think we are quite a few years away from the mass deployment.
Great, thanks, Imran. I think we have time for one last question for Mr. Kawasumi, and the question is, what innovative solutions have you seen to extend connectivity to rural and remote areas? And you can answer that. There's another question that you might want to touch upon that we didn't get to, which is, how do we ensure that the social returns are included in the equation? If we're looking at cost of networks, how do we factor in the social returns? Because it's not just the cost that the society has to bear, but the fact that they get these additional opportunities and additional commerce and jobs and those kinds of things. So if you have anything to add on that, that would be great too. Back to you, Mr. Kawasumi.
Thank you. I have explained already by the previous presentation by slides So as I said, there is no innovative solutions for the time being, but in the future, maybe there are many technology advances like satellites, low Earth orbit satellites, or Pacific or O3b or some other satellites ventures getting to this area to connect the last remote villages and landlocked in the small island developing state and Himalayan landlocked areas. But I think the femto cell is also one of the deployment in the Marshall Island to connect to the satellite link. They share 2 megabits transponder capacity by 29 atolls and small islands. And also, I have a question to Imran that satellite connection to this very isolated, far remote islands is commercially or costly effective, or because satellite tracking capability of this dish antenna is applicable to the small island village people, islanders people, to maintain or operate a costly, commercially viable. And also I stress that there are community network operated by the village people. They sometimes invest in the community network facilities, and also they will have a return from the investment. And they run the internet kiosk selling their village products on the internet. So this kind of solution is available already, and we have a case studies collected already. So that is my presentation. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Kawasumi. We are just about out of time. So I think would like to hand it back to Atsuko, to wrap up. And I think the additional questions, especially on the satellite, maybe folks can answer in the window or in the on the website. So Atsuko, back to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Thomas, for the very skillful moderation of the session, as well as the excellent interventions by the experts and very insightful comments and good questions from all the participants. I really enjoyed the chat box questions and answers, as well as the separate answers given in the Q&A box. I think the whole discussion gave us a good idea on where the last mile connectivity toolkit could fit in the overall landscape of connecting the unconnected. And I hope that the toolkit also stimulated the discussion, or will stimulate the discussion on the part of the participants moving forward in the government, in the organizations, and in the development of the project. And I hope that we can carry over and have separate one-on-one discussions with all of you, so that this discussion will be taken forward in concrete actions. As a next step, as you all know, ITUD is organizing the World Telecommunication Development Conference in November this year. And there are a series of events planned from now until November. And one of the most important events for Asia and the Pacific is the regional preparatory meeting from 9th to 10th March. And for that, as you know, we are soliciting contributions from member countries as well as members of ITUD to shape the regional priorities for the next 4 years. So I encourage all of you, the participants, as well as the sector members, to consider the usage, application, and how we can perhaps formulate the activities on connecting the unconnected and rural connectivity based on the last mile connectivity toolkits. And we will be happy to engage with you and support in the process. And on that note, thank you very much for all the excellent participation and engagement. I really enjoyed the hearing and listening to the expert views. And I hope that I will see you all very soon. So thank you, Thomas, and all the experts for spending time with us and sharing with us your excellent insights and the advice. Thank you. So I will close the meeting and I will see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Good day. Bye.